let me clarify about functions. So functions are actually like a block of code. So remember that functions are only block of code that executes a predefined task. So you must have a predefined task. So actually a predefined task. So once you have a certain task that you want to do, you can write your whole code under one block and then make sure that it's also reusable. So one thing about functions is you can reuse your code. So once I have a code to do something, then that code I can reuse it different times. So to have a fast, simple clarification of a function, I want you to note something. So just remember that this is just an architecture of maybe like a supermarket. So a function, take in scenarios maybe as a supermarket where you have different sectors. So you can have a sector maybe for like clothing, a sector for maybe like different for food. So that is it works under one main house. So in short, it means that it executes different different blocks of code under one roof. So for example, let's see the architecture of a function. So first, this is actually the main method. And there's something called calling a method. So calling a method means that you are passing in the parameters and whatever cases you want to be executed. So to create the architecture, so the simple architecture of a function, it takes in for empty functions takes in a void. So remember that by default, C++ returns, so maybe returns 0 to maybe like the memory of a computer. So void means it's returning nothing. So you can have void, then you can have your variable name, and then you can now like declare the number of code you want to actually be executed under this place. So this is the basic architecture. So make sure that you are outside this main method here. So in short, now this is a function. I now hope that you understand. So this is a method, and then this is a function. So make sure that we exit out of this main function. So that's why we're returning a 0, because it takes in an integer. So we are now returning int 0 by default. So because we are going to return maybe nothing, so if we were to return maybe a boolean, so we can have now a function with boolean, then assign it a variable name. So we for our cases, so let's do a simple quick example. So just make sure that you have this. So we are void, and because we are returning nothing, we are not going to maybe like now do maybe like a return 0 here. Our compiler will complain. So for such cases, if it's void, then you have to return nothing. So we are going to look at scenarios whereby we're going to return maybe some integers. So this is the basic architecture again. So let's say now we want to perform a simple let's perform something simple here. So you can say now void, then variable name. So this place we will actually like take in the parameters. If you have to pass in parameters maybe while calling your function, then you have to pass in here. So because for our case for now we're going to have no parameter, then we are going to leave it blank. Then make sure that you have this, and remember that unlike the for loops, we are not going to end this with a semicolon. So this is actually what it does. So let's say maybe like let's just print out something here. So let's say hello function, then we end it there. So this means we can reuse this function each and every time. We can reuse this code by just calling this. So remember the way I told you about calling a method, you just take this. So for me to call this, to execute this, I have to actually like take this. So let me just remove this because we're not going to use that, and then like paste it here, and then end it with a semicolon. So this is what we call calling a function. So don't mind about my spelling. So this is what we call calling a function. So when we now run this, we are telling the main method, hey, find this method here, which is now, when it comes to it, then it finds out that, oh, this is a function. So inside the function, we are telling the computer to now print hello function. So if we now run this, we expect that we now see hello function. So we can again reuse this. So we can have multiple of it. So semicolon, then make sure you have also a semicolon. So once you have that, this is like the awesome part of it. So we can have multiple codes so that we can now reuse them. So if we now run it, we expect that now our function gets called 3 times. So let's just print this in like new line. and then run it again. So let's see what would actually like be printed. So we now have hello function 3 times because we are calling the function actually like 3 times. Now let's say we want to maybe like print something more like now reasonable. So instead of printing something empty here, so we can have our function taking some parameters, some arguments actually, or retain some parameters. So we're going to say here that now if you want to maybe like print the name, so we have to use the data type here. So because we're using just one parameter, so we're going to say string. So we're going to say maybe like, then you give it a variable name. So let me just call it name. Then while now calling your function, if you now do this, if you now run it that way, the compiler will complain. So let's get to like know why this compiler will complain. So it says too few arguments. So it expected that we pass in an argument here because we passed in a parameter inside this one. So we told maybe our function like you're going to take in like one argument from here. So let's say now we pass in the name. So let's say now maybe like code with theme zone. So let's see what will actually like happen. So let's see. So it says hello function. Wow. So this means that we are trying to execute this. So I'm just going to now like say now that hello function. So let's now concatenate this. So hello, like say my name is done. We're going to now pass in the name here. So for you to actually make sure that this is printed, this line is executed, so you have to pass in to concatenate this with the variable name here. So if you now run this, we expect that now themes on will be printed. So it now says hello, my name is called with themes on, because we told now the function that hey, we need a space to maybe like store a name. So, and while we are calling that, this is now where you pass in your argument. So this is a parameter, then these are the arguments. So you can have again multiple like parameters. So maybe like we can have an int, maybe age, then we can now say maybe my name is Tim Zoen, then we can now see out again and say age is. Now you have to pass in here this age you are declared here. So if you now run this, let's see what would actually be printed. So, and my age is 50. So these are actually like how you can print them. So we decided to concatenate this inside so that it a little bit makes it organized than rather than passing it inside here. So it will actually like be difficult to pass in different in between these functions. So you can also have another argument here. So you can say now Boolean is drunk. So you can now say that it's drunk. So we can maybe like pass in here a Boolean. So my name is this. Then you can say now like drinking status. Then we see now. Then we pass in now our Boolean here. So that is drunk. So let's bring this one in another line so that it a little bit becomes well formatted. So we now have drinking status as 1. So it's taking in as 1. So for because it's for booleans we can have a true, either true or false, or 1 or 0. So remember that 1 will be represented by a true value and 0 will be presented by false. So that is how we can pass in parameters and arguments inside a function.